Spera, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 86. Fine Woven is finally gone. Recorded live Sunday, April 21st, 2024, live from iTechGear Central. This is Christopher Spera, the editor-in-chief over at iTechGear.org, and we are welcoming him back from the great beyond places.
Yeah.
Great beyond his places. Welcoming back from the sick room, from the infirmary section of iTechGear, Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
I'm finally getting back to normal, I hope. And I'll tell you what, if I ever have to be in a walker again, let me tell you, 4 days was all I want.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I'm looking forward to that getting back. And boys and girls, while you're still young, let me give you some advice. Do some core strengthening exercises so you can preclude this crap when you're older. Don't let the old man in.
Larry, you know, we know you just wanted the lollipops from the doctor. We know what it is.
Yeah,
we understand.
Actually, he was after his own stash. He was after his own
I love
stash.
that prednisone.
Well, we're glad
Former
you're
co-owner of WUGNET Publications, and man, we are glad you are back.
Guys, it's nice to be back with you.
Yeah, we missed you. We sure did. And of course,
who is that
there
again?
he is.
Oh, yeah.
There he is.
Who was that guy?
So we've got joining with his dulcet tones, the former contributing editor over at Gear Diary Pocket now, and of course, editor here at iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
I'm good. And you know, well, with Larry, I said, who is that? That people with me say, when's he going away? See? Good. We're doing good. How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving us right off.
Oh my, here we are.
There he is, camera in hand, muddy boots in hand, or at least
there you go.
Foot. Brother Joe McLaughlin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Did a show a little bit on, well, it was more of a rant on DRM and how DRM in the games of the not too recent past is making games unplayable.
Oh no.
So like anything from the 2000s
DRM
or
from
more.
The 2000s is making so that's on the Retro Arcade podcast this week.
Yes, sir.
I gotta say broadly, I hate DRM on any content. It's just it's more trouble than it's worth, more than not.
Well,
so
do you happen to know the first game that had copy protection on it?
No, and that's a good question.
Zork.
Microsoft's Adventure, the first game ever.
Did it really? I would have guessed something like a King's Quest.
It's back in that
something.
same 1980s, 1990s sort of time frame. Had to be.
Yeah. But guess what? It still works because all it is a specific format on the floppy. But
gotcha.
But unfortunately, once they added that internet thing to things, that kind of made it worse.
It made it a lot more complicated.
Well, if you remember back in the day, let's step with me. Come with me into the Wayback Machine, Sherman. Come on.
Okay.
Yes. And this is a shout out to my first ever real sort of part-time boss, Brother David Copy. If you're out there listening, sir, we're talking about you. If your ears are burning now, you don't know why. Come listen to the show, and we'll tell you for sure. The software station back in West Bloomfield, Michigan, is where I first got my first dose of copy protection software, and it was an absolute nightmare. It made games nearly unstartable. It made games nearly unplayable.
And it got worse when they moved it remotely into the cloud.
Yeah, it did.
It did.
But those first few years, I mean, it was absolutely a freaking nightmare. I can't tell you how many times I had to ring in returns for games because for whatever reason, people couldn't get the bloody game to run because they ran into some sort of a copyright error, or it just, croaked because they didn't have enough RAM. They didn't have whatever the thing was thought it was supposed to be looking for. It was horrible. So
anywho,
you know what really kind of, speaking of technology, Senator Elizabeth Warren sent out a video. I saw it on Twitter.
Same.
About Apple having a smartphone monopoly and how she's trying to gather trying to start a grassroots movement to go ahead and shut them down. And boys, please, because I'm busy banging my head against the microphone here.
Yes.
Come on, help me out. Larry, Joel, come on. Help me.
I have one comment, one little start off comment, and it's a big caveat that, on this show, we try really, really hard to not be political. We do. It is hard sometimes. And with that said, Elizabeth Warren and the rest of your cronies out there, stay in your lane. You don't know anything about the technology.
Yep.
Your advisors obviously don't know anything about technology. This was a mess. That should have never aired anywhere.
No, and if I am not a big fan of Senator Warren, but with all due respect, if Senator Warren or somebody that she knows or one of her supporters, if she would like, because she is clearly somebody that should be listening or visiting iTechGear, because she's really in the center of our wheelhouse. Somebody who is a little bit older, somebody who is perhaps not as tech savvy as they would like or would, in this case, need to be. Come over here, Senator Warren. I will respectfully and will without a doubt help get you up to speed, because oh my goodness,
Apple, if you want to be on the show, we'll send you a microphone and a headset and everything.
Absolutely, I would be.
Oh, she has one. You don't need to do that. I'm sure she has one.
Overjoyed.
But
to have
what
Senator
she doesn't
Warren
have is any common sense, because her tweet basically said that it's time to break up Apple's smartphone monopoly. Okay, hold on a second. All right, let's look at worldwide statistics for what is the market leading phone worldwide. Oh, it's not Apple, it's Android. All right, for one. Apple is the only one that has a sort of a market lead here in the United States, but she's doing this based,
but not even by that much.
Actually, but right, no, and that's true. Not even,
and she's
by
doing
that
this
much.
Well,
So,
she's doing this because of iMessage, essentially.
Well, yeah, she's doing this because Apple is a closed system, right?
Well,
it is.
There are no other manufacturers out there for iPhone compatible devices other than Apple branded, regardless of which OEM makes them. They are all
some people get Apple blessing, like Belkin, a lot of times.
Her thing is, she's saying, well, iMessage is keeping people out of group text messages.
They're breaking up relationships.
It's not
breaking up relationships. Okay, here we go.
People.
Here we go. I've got a ongoing group text message with my fitness boot camp group. Whenever we do, whenever they want to remind us that fitness boot camp is on Thursdays, they'd send one out there. If somebody does something awesome, like I did today, went on a 4-mile hike, I posted it there, and we do that for encouragement. And guess what? We've got people with iPhones. We've got people with Android phones. Everybody's there,
and I do it with my
I'm
work
not
people.
Missing anyone.
We do it
with my work people. We're both.
We do it within this group.
Yeah, and it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
The only difference is if you don't have the coveted bubble, your message is not encrypted. And if anybody in that group doesn't have that coveted bubble and you're on an iPhone, then the whole thing's not decrypted. And guess what? We don't care.
Yeah, who cares?
9 times out of 10, the lack of security is not exclusionary. Okay, let's get that out there right now. The lack of encryption is not exclusionary. Anybody with a text-capable device can participate in any text conversation in iMessage.
Yep.
Period.
Absolutely.
Period. There is no exclusion. The only quote-unquote exclusion is the lack of security, which turns the bubble green.
Right.
Okay.
And by the way, I want to make it clear that even if you move toward RCS, That's not always encrypted either, kids. If you think
Nope.
it is, you're kidding yourself. And it
If
depends.
you really care about encryption,
Yes,
personally,
use a private
personally,
messaging service for one
I
thing.
was going to say, personally, don't use iMessage. Don't use Google Messages. Don't use anything that does anything via
Yes.
SMS. Use Telegram. Use anything else.
Yep.
Right.
I mean,
so let me throw this. Historically, Senator Warren has done some things I think are great, some things that suck, like almost anybody.
Like all of them,
Like pretty much like all of them. The thing with this is a little history, guys. Remember, she first started talking about this in the beeper fiasco.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when she first started talking about this stuff. And this is just her repeating stuff that she has said before that was sort of misunderstood before. This is not a new statement out of the blue or anything like that. And I really do think, and Chris, you said this in the pre-show,
Right?
Her and others who keep trying to legislate these things, I think in a lot of ways they think they're in the right place. And on the surface, I can see why they might think that or why it might look like that. But when you actually dig into the what they're actually saying and what it really means, they're just wrong, unfortunately, and they don't seem to understand that they're wrong. And again, I don't think there's a malicious thing here. I don't think she's trying to be malicious here at all. I think she doesn't understand what she doesn't understand.
I just think she's A, misinformed.
I do too.
And B, even if she was informed correctly, I don't know that she completely has internalized.
Well, they don't have the context, is what usually happens.
And that's the problem. They're not tech savvy. They're not tech literate enough to understand. And I don't mean to belittle in any way, shape, or form. So if it's coming off that way,
well, they're trying to do a lot. I get it.
Sincerely apologize. But these people, their focus is not technology. Their focus is not the tech nitty-gritty details, all right, which is where a lot of this really has to be.
And even if you look at the original laws that set what defines a monopoly and does it. Apple is not a monopoly.
Right. No.
Under those laws, Apple is not at best, you could claim that in this country, an Apple and Samsung have what's probably a duopoly based on the number of devices sold.
To be very honest and upfront, there is no monopoly for anyone. All right.
No,
there is really a duopoly from an operating system perspective. There is a duopoly.
And more so from a hardware.
That's true.
Or you have iOS. One of the two. Apple is the only manufacturer of any iOS compatible hardware. It is
competing with anybody.
The only hardware that will run that particular operating system.
Let's also keep in mind that the iMessage platform that this started is no different. It's a private messaging platform, just like Telegram, just like WhatsApp or Instagram or any of these. You don't get to say who can interact with your platform. It's not about iOS. It's not about Apple. It's about the platform, the messaging platform, and how they choose to interact with the world. And if you're going to come and say, well, Apple, you've got to open things up. We want to break this apart. You've got to open these things up. Then you have to say it to every freaking platform out there, every one of them.
Yep,
all
absolutely.
of them.
Because if I were Apple and received that order, I would come back and I would say to the lawmakers, I will be happy to comply with your order on this stipulation that everybody else has to open up their system so that we can all interact. If you say no to that, you can pound sand because I'm not going to open I won't.
But we have to remember
better yet, just get with the appropriate organizations and design a freaking standard for interaction. That way all apps can support it if they want to. And that honestly, I don't know if that will be RCS. I don't know if it's going to be something else.
To be very, very honest,
not the way RCS was done, but yeah.
This particular issue or sub issue here is only part of the overall statement.
True.
Apple has a smartphone monopoly. All right.
Right.
True. But again, I think this is just a reaction to the other, right? Is really what it is.
It is a reaction partially.
We're responding to the symptom. We're not responding to the actual issue.
Right. The actual issue, if you get down to it, Apple does not have a monopoly. They don't have a controlling interest in the smartphone market, either in the United States or worldwide.
Well, and the other thing that the other thing you have to watch with when you use the phrase monopoly on things is that one of the assumptions of monopoly is if the vendor were to pull services, that all of a sudden the whole system would collapse. Yeah,
Right.
And Apple and that would be true if there was no alternative to Apple, but there is.
There is, and it's every other Android manufacturer out there that has a phone. All right,
and every other app. But yeah.
And this group, by the way, we fully understand because most of us use devices in both platforms in both places, and if we don't now, we
have
of
us at the same time,
and some of us at the same time, scarily enough. And so
that would be me.
We can tell you, switching is not a crisis. If you had to do it, you could do it. So don't this whole notion. So all of those things preclude any of this from really being called a monopoly, because monopolies apply that there's no alternatives. There are alternatives, kids.
And there are alternatives,
and they're good alternatives.
Just one other
very,
operating
very
system, but that's regardless of the whole thing. There are other device manufacturers. There are other devices that are available around the world. All right, and not only lots, and Apple doesn't have a controlling interest in that in the smartphone market.
They do not.
Not even in the US, kids.
Not at all.
All right. So interesting though that we were talking about the whole iMessage sort of aspect of it, and I almost interrupted and moved us to the next story, where Apple had on a request from the Chinese government, pulled a number of applications out of the Chinese Apple's Chinese App Store. All right, which included WhatsApp, which included Threads, which included Telegram, and I believe one other app that I'm
Signal, I think.
All right,
Signal,
and those were in fact closed systems, just like iMessage. Kids.
Yep.
Just like iMessage, there is no interactivity between all of those systems. They're just secure, and the Chinese government cannot intercept or read those messages in between the endpoints.
And you know something, what's really important to me anyway, what my biggest takeaway on all this is that the very company that Elizabeth Warren is maligning for what she did say is now saying we are obligated, and I'm quoting here, we are obligated to follow the laws in the countries where we operate, even when we disagree. Apple, that is the big and the right thing to do. I'm sorry, I agree with you.
No, and I have absolutely no malice.
A lot of kids out there whining because they don't have WhatsApp in China. But
right, but I don't have any disappointment. I'm not disappointed in Apple for complying with this order.
Nope,
no,
not a bit.
And we can say that I'm going to broadly say on a moral front, it's wrong of the Chinese government to pull these things or want these things.
Sure,
we can agree with that. We can all feel it that way. But the bottom line is, they need to change that themselves. The people in China would need to change that themselves. This is not. Apple's just trying to do business. Now, what's their choice? Stop doing business in China. That's your choice. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And that ain't going to happen.
Or any other country. Or any other country that they're in.
You can't tie this to the economy of buying rice from China.
Right.
No.
Right.
Apples and oranges.
Correct.
Yep, I agree.
Apples
I totally
and oranges.
agree.
Look at you.
Ding, 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 ding.
Making show titles as we go along.
Apples and Androids.
Dear.
Yeah. But seriously, Apple did the right thing. They complied with the governmental order, as you would expect them to comply with a governmental order from
and they
any
said
country
we don't agree with this necessarily, but we're going to do this.
Right.
That's the thing to do.
True. Very, very true. They did the right thing. So I cannot fault them for that, even though I am disappointed that the Chinese government
and keep
in
mind
that they did the right thing.
Well, keep in mind though, and this is not unusual though. Google has done the same thing with the Play Store for the most part. They follow the government laws as well. And again, we don't talk about it because it's easier to talk about Apple doing this. But here's the thing. They all have to do this. Yes. They all have to comply. So, They're not,
Yes.
the Chinese government is not going to make Apple pull it from their store and not make Google pull it from their store. It doesn't work like
Correct.
that.
Correct.
They
Correct.
pulled
So
the
you
app
can
at
you
the
can
store.
guarantee that the same apps that were pulled from the Apple
Yeah.
Chinese App Store were also pulled from the Chinese version of the Play Store.
You know,
Yep.
so let's keep in mind that everybody, they need to play the game. Whatever country you're in, that's what happens. And we see different rules in different countries all the time. It's not new.
Absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
is not new. There was
No.
a thing recently about that, something like this happening in the Indian government where they were asking things to be pulled from the different app stores that are
Right.
out there. I forget
Right.
which titles they were asking to be pulled, but they,
What's the same thing, isn't it? I
It's
mean,
the same
seriously,
thing.
It's the same thing. If you wish to do business, thou shalt comply.
you can now. I think you're welcome to make a public statement, and you should say, "Hey, we think this
Absolutely
is the
you
wrong
should.
thing to do," and make us think about it. But you still got to do it, and
You do. You
You
do.
know.
And yes, I fully agree that you provided that you are in a country that has free speech, you are free to speak against that governmental
Yeah.
move in that country
yes, yes,
as
assuming
much
you have
as
the
you
right.
wish. In China, maybe not so much, or somewhere else where they're where
Yeah, fair
negative
enough.
speech or contradictory speech on the government's actions are not necessarily encouraged or permitted. Maybe not, but you still as a legal entity, you still have to comply.
And I would expect,
Yep.
again, when you agree to do business in any place, any locality, any nationality, any state, anything like that, you are obligated to comply with the laws of that locality. And
Yes, you are.
guess what? That's, if you don't like it, don't do business there.
And that's the alternative for you as a company. You have that choice.
So
You can
Apple has
comply,
chosen
or you
to
can get out.
comply, and I understand. This is it is not. We're not talking about nickels and dimes here, kids. I understand.
You're
They need to
talking
comply.
about tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in business,
Yeah,
if not
understood.
billions,
Yep.
right?
Not that money makes an excuse for things. Don't get me wrong. And again, you could make moral arguments that this is bad, but again, their alternative would be to pull out, and there may come a time where they do that because there's other challenges with the manufacturing. They've
Right.
been moving manufacturing out of there for a while.
Right.
So who knows where this is leading, but. And right now, the Chinese market is actually down on Apple products in some ways because there's a lot of cheaper. Chinese have raised their own version. I'll call it their
Right.
own version of Android, if you will, and they've been very successful with it because they can come in with lower prices. So where this goes long term for Apple is hard to say, but I think
It
for
wouldn't
now they've done the
surprise
right
me
thing.
to see. I was gonna say, it wouldn't surprise me to see them exit the Chinese market because let me
Me
tell you
neither.
why. China wants to be in the operating system, and Apple's
They
not
do.
going to let that happen.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that would be the final point for them. I mean, that would be the final. They'd say, no, we're done. I think they're coming closer and closer to that. Again, we've seen results. Apple is slowly pulling back, but what they're not doing is just dropping everything and running. Is what they're not doing.
Right.
Oh no,
And-
and they wouldn't be. It's not smart. It's not smart business.
No, it's not. So
It's not smart
Nope.
business. So they
there
wouldn't
we
just
go.
yank
So here we
themselves
go.
out. Yeah.
But they don't
Yeah,
always do
the-
the right thing here, do they? Do they, Chris and Larry? Do they?
No, they don't.
No,
but they
they
recently did. But they recently did with something else.
Well, they don't usually do the right thing. They did because they had to.
Well, except for when something they brought out is utter crap.
And
Yes.
yes.
I
Agreed.
can't imagine.
There's a lot of backstory on this, and a very short one is back
Well-
last fall when the latest version of the iPhone came out. I, being close to my iPhone store here and living in my wall garden, I ran down and got my phone, and I was looking at the cases. I had my typical silicone case in my hand, and I had the other fine woven case in my hand.
Yes.
And I said,
and
I
the
wonder
headline
which one of
here-
these should I buy?
Right.
So
the
I
headline
talked
here-
to one of the guys who I buy stuff a lot from down there. He said, you'd probably be a lot happier keeping what you're happy with now. That's all he said. And I walked out without fine woven, and I'm happy I did.
Yep. Well,
Yep.
It's a
and
problem.
the
It
headline
really
here is that Apple has finally removed all of the fine woven products from the market. They've gotten rid of watch
People
bands.
didn't like it from the get-go.
From the
Yeah.
get-go. They felt like plastically sort of the
It
fine
was
woven.
crap.
It felt like little itty bits of
Yeah,
of,
leather,
dental
like it
floss.
or not, still felt a little bit luxurious. Not this.
Yeah, their leather cases are not what I would consider a good leather
Me
case.
either, no.
I mean, they
Right.
wear within a month. They look like crap, but at least in my history
There's
with
some
them, they
people
have.
like that.
Well,
You
some of
know,
the issue here with their
but
particular leather was, I mean, I don't know that it was actually real leather. It may have been vegan leather.
I'm sure it probably might have been. It
All
might
right.
have been.
But they did get rid of all of their leather base cases, and they put these fine woven products in place of all of
And
their
I
leather.
appreciate what they were trying to do there again, as
Absolutely.
always. However, we really needed a little more market testing before we did this. I think.
You think?
And I want to point out that we were talking about this back last September, that we didn't like these were garbage, and now here
Yep.
they are gone.
Well, so why was it so why were these things gone? They did not wear well. All
No.
right.
They didn't sell.
Their durability was absolutely horrible. All right. They discolored.
Yeah.
I read
they
a
got
high
dirty.
return rate too.
Yeah. And a lot of these things were returned. So I do not know what Apple will come out with in place of something fine woven.
Well, and we've said
if
this
anything
before.
at all. If
But we've
anything
said
at
this.
all.
Right.
We've said this before. We tend to like some Mac products some Apple products very well. But
Mhm.
but I think we've even said this on this show before. Sometimes with what I'm going to broadly call accessories, they've had more than a few misses. Like, oh, I don't know, the plug on the bottom of the Magic Mouse. Oh, I don't know,
even
the fine
start
woven
with
case.
me.
I'm not. But I've never found that. I didn't find their leather cases to be very good quality. I'd rather buy some third party cases of over theirs. And I think a lot of people do
the major reason
that.
wai they pulled their leather is
But I
because
think a lot of but I think with a
they
lot of
didn't
their
sell.
accessories like that, I think a lot of these accessories they third parties sell more than Apple do on
They
these things.
do.
Apple
And they
just
have a
has it in their
better-
stores as a convenience, right?
they,
more
they
than
have
anything.
a better handle and a better hold on these accessories, whether
So-
they be watch bands or cases or whatever else, than Apple does.
But this
It
is a
puzzles
category.
me. Go ahead.
Well, I said this is a category though where Apple has had a few misfires over the years. They really have, and it happens, But it's not. It's
I
not a
honestly
crisis.
think they could take a page out of Google's playbook here. Google's phone cases, I actually like them. They're not silicone. They're not hard plastic. They're grippable to some degree, and they're just nice. Maybe there's somewhere in the middle they could go with a new case. I don't know, but I don't think it's leather because they'll get hammered by all the
I think so too.
all the
That's not
tree
gonna,
huggers out there.
I don't think it'll fly either. But again, that's not the case I typically buy from them anyway. I like the silicone cases. They've been very
I
good
do
to me.
too. I do
They've been
too.
they've been good to me overall.
Silicone and I don't get along.
But to me, I like them.
The product is not for me.
I know, but
Right.
for me, and again, for me, it's thin, it's
Well,
light.
I don't like their
and
watch
it's,
bands,
and
but I like.
it's yeah, me neither. But it's grippy on the phone. I like the grippiness on the phone.
And I know that both you and Larry share that, and I respect it. So if the silicone works for you, but then by all means,
And
But-
I'm
but-
sitting here holding one that's 6 months old, and it
Yeah.
looks brand new.
Right,
Brand
mine
looks
too.
like
it did on the first day you pulled it out of the box.
But what
Yeah.
I will say, whether we again liking it or not liking it, that's a personal preference. But we don't like or dislike this particular product because it's a piece of crap. It's not. The silicone case is a very good case. Whether
is.
you like it or not, it's a good case.
It is.
Right.
And
It
so
is.
that's what I'm getting at. So they can make a good case, but otherwise they've been very hit or miss. Otherwise, so
They
And
have.
they've
with
had
other-
this
with
silicone
other
forever.
substrates.
They
if
have.
you will, with other sorts of materials. They've not actually hit the mark very well.
No, they really haven't, and maybe they will someday, but so far, no, not
This
not
one isn't.
to
This
me.
one isn't it, unfortunately.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
But ding dong, the fine woven is finally gone. It's
Yay!
yay, and let's move on.
Eh,
Okay, so,
well, yep.
so
Yep.
apparently the first alternate app stores are starting to appear in Europe. And Joel, I
So,
know this is something
Let's
that
before we go there, explain to people why we now have alternate app stores in Europe. Let's
because
sort of recap it for folks.
Europe deemed it needed, and that's their law.
The
There you
European
go.
Union determined that the Apple App Store was monopolistic in nature, and in order to remove that, what they determined to be an illegal advantage for Apple, they required that Apple open up the iPhone and the iDevice platform, meaning iPhones and iPads. All right. And more than likely, you're going to see it on the Vision Pro as well. Any kind of an alternative place where you may buy applications. This is all stemming from Epic Games' complaint against Apple related to the 30% commission that all manufacturers, all application manufacturers who net over $1 million a year must pay to Apple. So this is where this is coming from, and they're finally starting to make an appearance. From what I understand, it echoes in there right now. So I believe that there needs to be some sort of a review process for those apps to appear.
Yep.
So when are the problems going to start?
Well, there already are in some ways, because
I wouldn't doubt it.
This store is the store that opened. If I remember correctly, it isn't. It's an open source app, but apparently it's still got some rough edges. They're trying to smooth it out, so it's not quite there. Not quite there yet.
Yeah, well,
kind of reminds me of that old Bob Ueger saying, "It's just a bit outside." So
yeah, there may be some issues with it, but I don't think any malwares come from it yet,
and I don't think that.
And
has
I don't
anything to
think
do
it
with
will.
Being open. It has nothing to do with it being open source. It just
Correct.
happens to be that the first product out there is an open source product, which is interesting.
Right.
So I think the problems they have are just the problems of trying to stand up an app store. Period.
Right. And what everybody needs to know and understand is that there isn't just going to be one alternative app store. There's going to be more than one, from what
There'll be a boatload.
or at least there is the ability for there to be more than
so
one.
For those of you who left your cable company to go to a bunch of streaming companies, and now you're getting mad at juggling all these streaming companies, welcome to a whole new world. You're going to do it with your apps as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and what I think, the other thing that's kind of important to this too is they aren't going to be free either. I mean, just to get
right.
on the App Store, the Alt Store PAL is the one. It's like a $1.70 or €1.74 a month, I think it is, or something like that. So I mean, it's
and then plus the price of the app, isn't it?
Well, because people seem to think the Apple App Store was free, and it really wasn't. They were just bearing the costs and other things. You got to pay for this stuff. You can't just build another store without.
Actually, no.
You got to fund it somewhere.
It's the Alt Store PAL, which is the first one. Is €1 and 1.5 euros a year.
Okay.
A year plus
a year.
The
VAT.
So
a euro and
plus
a half
VAT.
Well, so does that mean? So does that mean? Here's a question I would have though, and I didn't quite get this yet, and it's because it's all new. So if you pay a certain fee a year for it, let's say I paid the fee for it. I get the App Store. I buy an app through the App Store of some kind, whether I buy it free or whatever it is, and I'm using this app that I got through it. What if I don't want to pay for the App Store next year? Do I still get to use the app that I bought, or do I now lose access to that app or updates?
There's another good point too,
question, right?
So do I have to pay them forever in order to just keep access to the apps that I bought through the App Store?
The way I read that is you don't, Chris. I think you own that app because you just paid for the gateway for a certain period of time. That's all.
But wouldn't that mean I wouldn't get access to updates anywhere because updates are being delivered through that other app store? So does that mean I lose access to updates? That might be up to the
developer too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be answered here, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and then how do returns work, and how do the unhappy people work?
Right.
It's all good questions.
Yeah. I think the biggest I don't think that everybody has completely thought all of this through.
I'm going to say probably not.
All right, and the moment that, and maybe, the store has gotten past this. Testnet has gotten Testnet has gotten past this by charging €1.50 a year for access to the store.
Right.
There
Well,
may be no commission that
right.
is paid
The
to
web
them, right?
That might be a possibility too. The
Ah.
website itself for that store says your subscription, your €1.5. I want to say €1.50. Well, that's not right.
Yeah.
uh,
Close.
your subscription covers Apple's core technology fee, payment processing, and server costs. I'm like, that ain't gonna last
on
for
€1.50. That's
that ain't gonna be
that
for long.
Right now, it's a loss leader. They're running at a loss.
Basically, yes.
All
Hmm.
right, they're
That's what
running
I
at
would
a
say
loss
it is.
unless
Agree.
until it
And
catches on and they start getting traffic.
if
So,
you're interested in it too, you can also, outside of the EU, load the Mac OS or the Windows version of it. I'm not gonna, but we'll you know, I don't need an app store to buy an app for Mac OS or Windows. I know how to buy applications. I have done it the same way for 30 years.
sure.
All right.
Sure.
I don't need a freaking store to go buy apps on that. I mean, by the way, Microsoft, that includes you. I don't use your store. You know.
I use
Yeah,
their-
what
I use
happens?
their-
What
I use their
happens when
store
that when one of these stores just kind of folds and goes under?
Well,
This is what I'm
that's
saying.
my thinking.
That's
well,
yet
then
another
why do you
problem.
and then why do you think I use open source to begin with,
Well,
Larry?
let me
I use
Yeah.
a lot of open source software, Joel.
But-
I do. I
Right.
love it.
but and this particular app
like
store, this app store is open source. It doesn't mean it can't fold.
This is true. Yep.
But what I was going to say, you were just kind of talking about the what happens when one of these stores folds. Well, gee, Amazon abandoned Windows, so you can't get Android apps
Yep.
on Windows now. So I guess we're going to see what happens, aren't we?
Yes, we are very soon.
Yeah, and
Actually, there are now 4 alternate app stores, by the way. There's the Alt Store, Scarlet, Side Store, and AppDB. So they're
Okay,
out
there
there
we go.
already.
Go.
They're coming. They're
They're
there.
coming.
coming and
Coming for your money.
what everybody needs to understand is Apple covers their operating costs for the store out of that 30% commission
do.
that developers pay to Apple for
a
living there.
portion of that, I'm
Hold
sure,
on.
yeah.
Let me get this all out. All right. They covered their operating costs. They cover servers and coding and updates and whatever else to the App Store out of that. All right.
Vetting.
All right. Right. And vetting and reviewing of apps to ensure that there's no malware. These other app stores are going to have to do the same thing in order to be able to operate their stores.
Yes, they will.
All right. There's no
Yeah.
way around that because nobody wants to get polluted with malware. All right. If you remember Cydia, all right, when
Yep.
jailbreaking your iPhone was the thing to do. All right.
Still
It
is for some.
Absolute.
but yeah.
It was an absolute malware mess. All right. Because it was totally open. There was no reviewing of anything. And everybody got polluted that went in that store. All right. And if you were planning on doing any financial stuff on your phone, if you were planning, I wouldn't do it if on with a Cydia related or supported phone, because you were going to get your information was going to get scraped and sold and stolen, and your identity would get stolen, and your money would be gone, et cetera, et cetera. The fees that you pay to Apple cover you being able to go and breathe easy that this is secure and not polluted.
Or at least easier.
Other alternate stores are going to have to do the exact same thing. There's going to be a fee, and
Whether you like this process or not,
is not gonna cover it.
Yeah,
Right.
whether you like this whole thing or not, you cannot disregard the numbers of what percentage of apps are laden with malware in Apple's App Store versus Android. It's a fact. It's like a gazillion times more. And yeah, I know one of us here will disagree with that, but people are stupid. We aren't, but most people are not stupid, but they're just unaware of how to keep out of trouble.
They are
Apple keeps you out of
because
trouble.
They have Apple or Google doing this stuff in the background
Right.
and they're unaware that is actually happening. All right. Now, there may not be a lot of
And
malware in the Google Play Store or in the Amazon store or any other
No, but
alternative.
that's not where they're getting it all. They're
Android.
getting it all in side loading.
Well, and there is, yeah, but my point is, all right, my point is, these stores are going to have to do, they're going to incur the same costs.
No,
that Apple is
my
incurring.
point is they're not
Apple
going to
doesn't.
have to do it. That's the point.
well,
won't.
but if they're charging you a fee for the service and they
Right.
deliver malware to you, you have a grounds right there to sue them.
Right.
Yep.
Because they
Totally
didn't
agree.
properly
But if
provide.
that app goes on an Apple phone and it's an Apple app, do you think you're going to go after that store and get anything? No, you're going to go after Apple.
And Apple's going to
Apple's
say it's
going
not
to
our
look at you
store.
and
They're
say,
gonna tell
"Where'd
you to
get-
pack
where'd you get
sand."
the app?"
Yeah. I mean,
They're
if
going
you
to
go
wonder
after
where
Apple,
you got the app, and when you tell them that you got it from an alternative store, they're going to say,
Apple
Apple's
say
gonna be like,
goodbye.
so
Done.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So sorry.
Too bad, so sad. Yeah,
Yes,
there you go.
didn't get it from
I mean-
our store. We don't have any liability. Go after the other.
But it's going to happen, is all I'm saying.
Of course,
Oh, I
it
know
is.
it. Of course it will.
It's gonna happen once, and then it won't happen again.
Well, you know where
Yeah.
some of this could actually come from, right? Are those emulators that are starting?
Well-
to pop up. Now they won't come out of
Maybe yes,
malware
maybe
from them
not,
coming out
but-
of the Apple App Store, but they're starting to hit.
I'm gonna say this. All
Go
right.
ahead.
If you want to mess around with emulating old game systems and stuff, it's sketchy always. It
Yes,
doesn't
it
matter
is.
what operating
Why is
system
it
you
sketchy,
use,
Joel? Why is it sketchy?
because companies like to keep their IP, even if it's 30 years old.
Yep.
Case in point, Atari. Atari still exists. All right.
And those
there
games
are
that they
some-
published in the 80s and in the 90s, which may be part or may be available on
And
those
these-
emulators, still
Ye-
belong to Atari.
Well, no, wait. They're not available in the emulators. The emulators don't make
Yep,
them
yep.
available. You have to
No.
go find the ROM. All right. Now, Atari is keeping their IP owned by them by bringing out releases like the Atari 50th anniversary cartridge / CD / whatever it was, depending on what system you bought that game for. I bought it on
Mhm.
cartridge because I bought it for my Switch. So I can play a bunch of Atari 2600, which is Atari IP. Not even the developers that worked for them get any money from that anymore now that they're retired or dead. But Apple doesn't want to be in the business of that.
Right.
Because
the
how
issue-
are
but
you
the
going
issue
to
is-
copy the ROM to your iDevice?
Well, the issue
that
is
might be
it-
difficult.
The Atari example is a really good example in that if you're wanting to play Space Invaders or whatever it is that you want, and whoever owns Space Invaders, I thought it was Atari. All right. And you
No,
download that
Taito
ROM
owns it.
and you play it on the emulator on your iPhone.
Depends which
Main
version, Chris.
issue- I'm sorry.
Chris said Taito owns Space Invaders, which is true if it's the arcade version, but Atari
Sure.
brought it out for
You're right.
the
You're right.
2600.
But
You're right.
the point is though, all right, the main reason why Apple has not wanted to get into the emulator business or allow emulators on the store has
Right.
everything to do with copyright violations. Now, like I said,
Correct.
Apple or Atari may still own the rights to that pick a game, all right, to that game that
Right.
you're interested in. And if you went out to the internet and you downloaded this ROM, and let's
From
assume
a sketchy
it's
site.
free, and let's assume that it's virus free, all right, and you install it on your machine and you're playing it, there's a issue of copyright violation. The
Yep.
owner of that game did not get their cut for you downloading it and enjoying it and playing it on your device.
Right.
You
Right.
bypassed, you've obtained that particular game illegally. All right.
Yep.
There
Yep.
should be some level of money or royalty coming to the game rights owner for that
Correct.
particular game.
Yep.
And it's too easy to find these games online, number one, to download them to your iCloud Drive, have them appear on your iDevice,
Right.
picked up by the emulator, installed or at least read and played. All right.
Yep.
This is why Apple has not wanted to do this.
Well,
Yep.
and some
You
of
know-
these are quote unquote. The claim is, well, it's okay because they're abandonware. Kids,
No.
that's not a
Yeah.
valid legal term.
No,
Not
Okay.
anymore.
no,
or
they
not
are
yet.
not abandoned if
Yeah.
the copyright is still valid.
If the copyright's valid,
Someone
you
has
cannot. Somebody owns it. Whether or not they're enforcing it is a different issue. But the
Right.
point is, it's still illegal. It's still a gray area at best.
Now.
And it's
For the ROM, emulation is legal. You're
What's it?
allowed to emulate computer software, and that is allowed. But the problem is the ROM itself is not your code. The only way it's your, even if you bought the cartridge,
Yeah.
Right,
the
right.
Atari
You
might
bought
be
the
like
ability
Well-
to run that software on
the
your
2600, right?
Isn't
on your
there
console.
still even
Right.
even though the writing an emulator in itself is not illegal to have or own or
Correct.
buy or have, but
Or
if
to
I
run.
remember correct, but I remember correctly, isn't there still again a gray area that might involve in private kind of lawsuits? So if you used an emulator that you wrote to run somebody else's ROM, yes, having the ROM is the illegal part of it, but you facilitated it by enabling them to do that. So
Right.
can you
So
can
the
you be
person
sued?
that wrote that
Private-
published
Probably
that
not.
emulator is now liable.
Right.
Well, no, I don't
Well,
know.
with
No,
one
I'm asking. I'm not
exception,
saying.
but-
I'm asking.
Well,
Can they?
right, but with one exception to that, because like here's a good example, because I've dabbled in emulation. I'm a retro computing and arcade
This is why
game
I
person,
Absolutely.
story, yeah.
right? So in order you like, here's one good example: the Atari XL 800 XL. That was my first computer. To emulate that properly in the emulator, not only do you have to have the emulator itself, all right, and maybe the ROM cartridge, all right, but you also have to have the BIOS for it. There is a BIOS on the Atari 800 XL that is not legal for you to have. All right.
Yeah.
Technically, I have it because it's sitting right next to me. An actual Atari 800 XL is in my room. So can I emulate the cartridge legally? No, because the cartridge I may not have. All right.
Right.
And Atari might even say, well, just because you have the cartridge doesn't mean you can emulate that. Just because I have the Atari 800 XL doesn't mean I can emulate that either. So
Right.
that's where the gray area is. That's why there
that's what I was gonna say.
are
According-
people like David from 8-bit, the 8-bit guy. He's
Mhm.
bringing out the Commander X16, which is a brand new computer that will run Commodore software.
Sure.
So among other software. All right. And he's not using any parts of Commodore's software.
Well-
He's basically doing a clean
He's
version of it.
he's
And-
basically effectively reverse engineered it, if you
Yes.
Well,
which is
and-
legal.
and has written his own way around all these things. But
Well, there's
as I
also-
said, the whole
there's-
beeper fiasco. All right, that may
Right.
or may not be legal.
Right.
And that is probably why Apple's not into this. Because here, let's
Well-
take a bit. The story actually takes us back to 1999, where Steve Jobs up on stage highlighted at Macworld on the new iMac G3 the Connectix Virtual Game Station, which was an emulator for, I believe it was PlayStation games. And Sony didn't like that too much,
Yep.
so it's gone now.
Now,
So-
Yeah.
I will tell you, according to the article that we're citing on Apple Insider, all
right.
they are saying it's legal to dump your own BIOS files from the consoles you own
True.
and make ROM files for games you own.
True as well.
It's not legal to get these from other sources and use them.
Right.
All right.
And the
So,
hard part
this is
is
a gray area.
you.
This is really fuzzy and is a gray
Right.
area.
Well, but
And
look at
how-
But there's another piece of this too. There are machines out there now. There's actually this sort of resurgence of retro gaming, and there's a couple of devices that will play Atari cartridges, for example, that are out there
Right.
now. But effectively they're doing emulation to get there because those chips don't exist anymore and those things don't exist anymore, and so
Right.
they're emulating. However, what they have done is licensing, kids. They paid
Yes.
for licensing. That's how they get around it. They paid for licensing.
Yep. So
So that's a whole
I
nother
would
branch
not
of this.
surprise me that Apple decides we're gonna go back on what we said and not do it at all.
I think
So,
I wouldn't be surprised either. I
Yep.
agree with you.
because Apple doesn't want to be in that mess. They don't want their own users to be in that mess, even though it's just like the App Store wouldn't be Apple's problem, but Apple does like, preventing their people from getting into trouble, whether you want them to or not. That's a
Fair
different
enough.
thing,
Fair
right?
enough.
Right.
But so
there's a lot that's going on with this particular
there is.
issue. There's a
Complicated.
we're not going to completely define everything. We're not going to
No.
completely resolve this.
Correct.
Apple's been skirting around this for a long time. Since
Very long time.
1990, blah blah blah. All right,
Right.
which is one of the reasons after Sony went after them that they completely, got out of this particular business, if you will, and they
Yep.
do not allow emulators on any of their hardware, largely because they don't want to get involved in any of the copyright related stuff. They won't want to be liable for any of this, and there's a gray area where, what are you allowed to do, what are you not allowed to do, especially for things where the chips don't exist anymore, and there's no way for this to technically be run on your hardware without that chip support, without some kind of an emulator. There's no way to go ahead and actually address the copyright issues, etc. So this one is fuzzy. This one is problematic, and I know that there's going to be more to come on this.
I do too.
All right.
Yep.
People like Nintendo, they're famously litigious about
Yes, they are.
their characters. I mean, let's face it, Flappy Bird. Those that maybe remember Flappy Bird, all right?
Yeah.
It got pulled out of the App Store. Why? Because of the freaking pipes that looked exactly like Nintendo pipes.
Yep.
All right. And I mean, the guy,
And to be fair, these folks have the right to protect their IP. I get it.
Their intellectual
Even though we
property
think
have the
sometimes
right,
they go
yes.
too, we do think they go too far sometimes, but we understand it. They do have that right.
Well, they would aggressively want to protect their interests, and you cannot blame them. All right,
No,
because
you
the
can't.
first time that anybody went and played Flappy Bird, everybody said the same thing. Oh, look at the Nintendo pipes.
Yep.
And it's not their software nor something that Nintendo would have actually wanted to release themselves, and so they went after the manufacturer, even though he was able to pocket and keep his, well over $700,000 that he made on that one application over a single weekend. All right. He had to pull the app. Away it goes.
That's what happens.
Yeah, shit happens. All right. Well, look, I'm going to go ahead now and move us out of our extended Apple segment, and we're going to jump into the mobile Linux, and there's some exciting things that are happening here.
There are.
The Google Pixel 9 Pro has leaked.
Yes,
And
apparently.
I know, Joel, you've been drooling all over this all week. What's going on with this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say drooling, but
somebody get Joel a napkin. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
So
there
apparently, somebody actually has the prototype. So one of the prototypes of the Pixel 9 Pro, this is Rozek. I can't say it. Yeah,
Rozek.
Whatever you say, however you say it. So the
Gesundheit,
interesting thing, right? The things that really the assumption, a lot of the assumptions of the design looks like to be right. So far as the way the back of it looks, they're kind of going away a little bit away from the the bar that was edge to
Mhm.
edge to just a hump in the middle. And then looks like very, very actually very iPhone like by the looks of the edges of it.
Mhm.
But probably the more interesting thing for me is that the boot screen showed it has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM
Mhm.
made by Micron and 128 gigabyte of Samsung storage, which that's gonna vary depending on which model you get, of
Sure.
course.
Sure.
But the 16 gigabyte, that's a big deal. I mean,
That's
so
twice what an iPhone has.
right.
But an
Yeah.
iPhone doesn't need it.
No, but
Well, but I bet you could use it, and I bet you would like it if your iPhone had it. But
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is
Yeah.
iOS code tends to be a little tighter to
A little
begin
bit,
with. So
yeah.
its requirements
Yeah.
aren't the same. Its efficiencies are higher.
Well, if
to
you
begin
yeah,
with.
Apple
recall-
spun that
Because-
same story about their 8 gigs and their Macs too. But
But
Right.
but they do manage end to end, so they're probably right.
right, it's a closed system, so they can go ahead and optimize,
But-
refine, rewrite that code to make it
But
more
when you
efficient.
but when you take it broadly and compare it against other Android devices that are out there and coming out there, this is a good thing. I mean, it really is. It's a hugely
sure.
good thing.
Sure,
Yep.
it is.
Yep. So and the rumor has it the code name for the 9 Pro is Cayman, CAIMEN, and then the Komodo for the supposed Pixel 9 Pro XL.
Right.
Which means
Right.
if there is an XL, oh yeah, you better believe I'm
Oh,
going to go for
well,
that.
Well,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
want to say, as Larry has said in past things, when you see a Google leak, it's often Google that leaked it.
Truth.
Yes.
Truth.
So
They tend to be
so
the ones behind their own leaks.
so we tend to know that in this case, odds are pretty good. We tend not to report a lot on rumors. We try not to,
Right.
but something like this, odds are good. It's probably pretty close to true, if not true.
Yep.
So
Yep. And let's face it, they're ramping up for their launch later this
exactly.
year. So there's going to be
trying to
ones.
gain excitement and
There's going to be ones out
Yep.
there. There's going to be devices in case makers' hands, so
Yep.
that cases can be made, so that on day one you can order a case.
Yep.
Maybe
Right.
not even from Google.
Nope.
Which
But that's
usually
how
what
we
I end
that's
up
how we
going for.
that's how we usually see what the
Yeah.
apples are going to look like too, the same way, because
Right.
the case makers get this stuff first.
Yep. So
this is actually a
I'm
prototype.
excited about it. Yep.
Well, you know
Yep.
what else actually may generate some excitement from all of this is the
What's that?
fact
The
is the
reorg.
fact that Google has reorged their
Yes.
organization, and they're combining their Chrome, Android, and hardware teams. So this is really interesting. Joel, you're again,
Yep.
this is all you. So what's going on
Yep.
with this reorg?
Well, they announced a major internal reorganization, which forms the platform and devices team that's going to be under Rick Osterloh, who was formerly from Motorola.
Mhm.
And I think wasn't he with Microsoft at one point? I can't
think he
remember.
was. I think he
Yeah.
Oh,
was.
that
I
sounds
thought
familiar.
I saw that or heard that.
So I thought at one point he ran the Xbox team, but this is I don't know. We'll see what happens with this. It kind of makes sense.
Mhm.
And they're trying to also do a lot with AI with obviously because everybody is, you know, even freaking rice cooker makers are putting the letters AI on their rice cooker, even though it doesn't have a CPU in it.
Hey, I need that for that thing
anyway.
to pop up after 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
That's right. So I mean, so we'll see what happens. Maybe it might mean things like maybe like there might be more synchronicity between what you see on your Google Home Hub and on your phone, which honestly lately actually they've been looking pretty close to each other. Even though
Right.
the Home Hubs are usually running, I believe the Home Hubs are running Fuchsia OS, not Android. They at one point were Android, but I think they've all switched to Fuchsia without really telling anybody, because I'm sure it's just happening in the background. So,
Sure.
but I mean, I don't go down to my Home Hub and say, "Hey, update your software." No, it's just done for me. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
So,
And just so everybody knows and understands, it's Rick Osterloh will be overseeing. I mean, is going to be heading up this group. And you said that before.
Yep.
But it combines the Pixel Nest, which is some of the hardware that you've been
Correct.
talking about, as well as Android and Chrome groups. Hiroshi Lockmeyer, who was the lead of the Android team, will be moving to an undisclosed other project area within Google and Alphabet. So,
Yep.
I mean, on the way out job.
yeah,
Yes.
something like that. I would assume that it's something like that. They've basically taken, you know, the keys away from him, and he can't drive the car anymore. So, I don't doubt that he will be moving to. He'll probably be taking some time off to spend more time with his money soon. So,
Or
Well,
family.
in general, I think, you know, reorganizing is probably a good thing for them. I guess we'll see. Mostly because to me, it'll give them more, very much like we just got done saying with you know, iOS and Apple is very efficient because they kind of have the ends connected, if you will.
Yep.
This may allow Google to do something similar with the Pixel devices.
At least with their own
more so than
devices.
I was going to say more so than they have so far with their own devices.
Right.
So,
By the way, he
but-
never did work for Microsoft. I looked him
Oh,
up
good.
on
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I thought he did. The name's
I thought
very
I had
familiar.
heard it as well, but
Yeah.
apparently we're wrong.
Yeah, Google's been in the news a little too much lately here too
Well,
about their people.
they've
and
been
Right.
sit-ins
sort
and
of-
don't bring your personal views to the workplace.
Nah,
and
nah, nah.
Well, you know, Google
Time for a shuffle.
Google has been
Yeah.
in the news. They've been doing a lot of hacking and slaying in terms of products they've been killing off recently.
yeah, they have.
It's true.
So they're weeding things out. It appears though with the things that they've recently killed, and then with the things that they're recently combining, like this, that they are trying to get a handle on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and they're trying to make things better. So we'll see how it all goes.
Yeah, I think it's a
Hopefully,
positive
hopefully.
direction. You
I
know,
think-
mean,
I
we'll,
think-
we'll
I
see.
agree.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too. It will be good to see what comes out of this and how there may be better interaction or better interplay between the different product lines and devices, and see how the software and the hardware can marry up and maybe be a little bit more cohesive.
Speaking of being more cohesive,
This is
sounds
what
like
I'm saying.
sounds like Samsung's doing something like that too.
Does sound like Samsung is doing it too.
Maybe.
You know, apparently
Wonder where
maybe.
they got that idea.
I don't know.
Who
Every other
knows?
Android user.
But yeah, I mean, well, but I don't think Android's always had this
No, they haven't.
from the bottom. At one point, I thought they were on the right.
Again,
but-
let's go ahead and make certain that everybody understands that
Yeah.
Samsung is switching their the direction of their app drawer, right? They are thinking of going to a vertical based app drawer where you swipe up from the bottom and you see the drawer of apps come up. You will always probably have some home screen action going on, but it's no longer a swipe to one side or the other. It's going to be up from the bottom.
I think it makes sense. It kind of brings them back more towards stock Android. Who knows? Maybe it actually results in them having to put less code out in order to get their OS updates.
that was sort of my thinking as
And
well.
that's
It
where-
simplifies that.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a very good, insightful sort of thing. I would
since
agree.
since the way it is,
Right.
since that up from the bottom is the way the Pixel does it. It kind of makes sense.
Agree.
And most other Android devices, that's the way they do it. Most of them,
Correct.
not all of them. So it's nice
Absolutely.
to see.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I mean the functionality in and of itself isn't changing. All right. The app
Nope.
drawer is the app drawer. The apps, you install an app, it appears in the app drawer. All right. It's just where are you going to get it? Which direction does it flow up into the UI?
Yep.
All right. This next story though, and the last one that we're going to cover in our mobile Linux segment before we go ahead and take a quick break. This one kind of made me chuckle.
Yeah.
It kind of made me chuckle to be honest. AI is all over the news everywhere. You can't get through any kind of a
You can't even
internet
watch
ad site. You can't
TV.
get
And
through-
by the way,
you can't
very
watch TV. You can't go to the store.
very much like we said about our politicians.
Yes.
This is how AI is used all throughout the media right now by people who don't understand or care what it really means.
True.
Right. Right now, AI, which stands for artificial intelligence, really isn't
Either. I know.
Right.
It's artificial, but it's not intelligent right now. Right now, it's a large language model, which makes it
Correct.
easy to predict things. All right. This allows you to quickly and easily predict what somebody is looking for, or maybe.
But at the end of the day, it's still really a big database lookup. That's really
Because
what it is.
And that's
Based on
all that it
previous
is. It's looking
information.
for
That's all
similar
it is.
terms. Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
looking for similar terms.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
But
Our story is
that management saw this coming. AI is going to be coming for management jobs.
Well,
they finally realized it's not just
Yeah.
line
And
jobs.
now they're worried.
Now they're
Yeah,
worried.
they're
worried.
worried.
Yeah, it isn't
Tons
so
of
much that
guns.
it's not so much that they predicted it. It's just now they're realizing, gee, this might affect us too.
Right.
Never mind that the
I-
first people that used any kind of business models was management.
And so,
You
so
know?
let for all of those who like have been following this story all along, let me just give you guys in management a big duh, because
Yep.
Morons. Honest to
In
goodness,
fact,
really
I
kinda bothers
personally
me.
think I was gonna say I personally think management has more at risk than the
I do too.
cogs, because you know their job is to oversee what you do, right? AI could probably do that a lot better and a lot more efficient.
Right. But
Well,
well,
because even if the cog jobs go away, there are going to be other cog jobs to support AI running. And guess what happens to
Yes.
management? They're still not necessary
That's
thank
right.
you.
in
Thank
this
you.
case.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this was the one area that everybody thought, well, somebody's got to be around to supervise the AI. Why? Why does somebody ever have to be around to supervise the implementation of the AI, or supervise the AI?
You just need a tech to fix it when it's not working right. That's all.
Says who?
All
right.
you got to do is have a tech to fix it.
Yes, that's all you, because it's gonna do
Right.
its thing. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, well, at least maybe now they're gonna go ahead and put some sort of
Yeah.
limiter on what
Bumpers
it can
now?
and cannot do, because
Yeah.
and they're gonna have to do it. They're gonna have to do it impartially, because if they don't, there's a lawsuit that's brewing. Okay, you wouldn't save your own butts. You wouldn't save your own butts, but you're going to go ahead and
Save
allow
mine.
our butts to be cut.
Right.
That's not right. You can't, if you're going to limit it, you have to limit it equally so that it saves everybody else's stuff. But,
Throw them under the bus. You can't be selective.
correct.
Yep.
Correct. So you're going to have to do what you need to do in order to protect everybody's job, not just your own. So there you go. Well, we'll see what happens. A lot of people are, myself included, are a little bit sketchy on it, because I've seen one too many. There's been one too many Terminator movie out there. So Arnold, if you're listening, I will happily be your neighbor. Okay.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
But unfortunately, it appears as though you're gonna be back.
Yeah, there you go.
But I'll be your neighbor. Absolutely, I'll be your neighbor.
Neighbor, like a good neighbor.
Like a good neighbor. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So
Oh
anyway,
my.
as I mentioned, thank you. As I mentioned,
That was terrible.
iTech
Thank
Gear
you.
Weekly, episode 86. We'll be right back after this brief message. Hi, this is Christopher Spera with iTechGear.org, and I'm here to tell you that iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly are on Patreon. Patreon is a platform for creators, allowing them to express their creative side in an organized, marketable fashion and earn a living or create a really cool kind of side hustle. You can create a community around your hobby of choice. You can gain followers. You can get members and supporters all along the way. You can create subscription products that, for a pledged amount every month, you'll provide to your members and followers. Setup is easy. Prices are reasonable, and you can have your pledges auto deposited into an account of your choice every month. With iTechGear.org, our initial offering is a monthly newsletter for just $3 a month. This is our initial offering, and we'll have other tiers and other products and other offers up in the coming months. Become a patron of our site. Grow with us, and we'll provide you with the tech understanding that you're missing right now. Join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/iTechGear. That's www.patreon.com/iTechGear. And we're back. This is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 86. Fine Woven is finally gone. And we've got the Windows segment here that I want to get us into. And there's really only one story in the Windows segment, but that before we get to our tip and to our pick. But that's okay. There's not too much going on in the Windows area right now. And to be honest,
There's stuff coming up, though. We'll be talking about
there
stuff
is,
pretty soon.
There is.
Yes.
It'll get interesting in a month or two in the Windows area, and there'll be some interesting stuff to talk about. But for right now, Larry, you had mentioned that you personally know the engineer who added the Windows Zip support to Windows. There's a story out off of NeoWin, and I know it's one of our favorites. Where he was actually almost let go.
Yeah, I certainly don't know all of that backstory. I did meet Dave. I've spent a lot of time in Redmond for various projects from 2 to 6 weeks at a time, and I still have a friend who was at that time working in the MS-DOS area with at Redmond, and Dave came on first, I think, at that as an engineer, just a basic engineer with MS-DOS. He and my friend were both Canadian, and I think actually my buddy got him the job. But I don't know about this story. Obviously, this is closed stuff. It just came out, but it's kind of odd. I mean, when you see and read stuff like this and you go, oh my God, I know that guy. I shook his hand. I ate with him at the cafeteria out there. It's just kind of funny. But
So Chris, let's tell people what the story is.
yeah, Chris.
What happened?
So apparently, Dave Plummer, who wrote some code that actually put WinZip or zip file support.
Yeah, not WinZip,
Not
just Windows
WinZip
Zip.
specifically, but
just compression files.
Nico Mack was the original author of WinZip. Right. Helped provide a interface for zip file support on the Windows platform, and his application WinZip was famous for years for that. I know that he ended up selling it to someone, but Dave Plummer went ahead and actually built zip file.
Well, he had an app himself. He owned an app and a sideline business in software at one point, still working for Microsoft, and everything was approved by Microsoft.
Right.
His product was called, I believe, Visual Zip.
Right.
And someone blew the whistle on him at Microsoft and complained to HR.
Dave
and
kind of did it to himself too. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, he did. He won. So he went home on Friday afternoon driving a jalopy, and drove himself in to the office on Monday in this wonderful ZR1 Corvette.
Yep. But yeah. he backed that up by saying he'd always had as his screensaver or his desktop picture was a picture of a Corvette because he's going to always get one.
Right. And so Visual Zip or the whatever app he allowed him to do that, and he ended up getting himself into a boatload of trouble over this app. And because when you work for a software company like Microsoft, you effect anything that you come up with, any application or ideas or any quote unquote intellectual property that you create while you work for them, they lay claim to. And so
sure.
And that's usually in your contract somewhere, by the way.
Yes, it's usually in your onboarding paperwork of some kind. Anything that you do, anything you create, they lay claim to. And he went and bought himself this really literally top of the line core
And
of that.
for a reference point, when this all happened, if you remember when Windows 95 came out, a little product followed that called Microsoft Plus 95, which was a version of an enhanced version, if you will, of Windows 95. And that's where this zip product landed.
Right. And it was actually like it ended up calling it compressed folders. And from what I understand, a lot of that original code is actually still in Windows 11 today. All right.
Wouldn't surprise me.
As the original code that Dave wrote. So there is some issue with it needing to be refactored to come to up to a more efficient, more modern version. But he almost got himself canned as a result of all of this. I think a little fast talking and a little bit of geez, I promise I'll never do this again sort of stuff. Kind of saved his tuchus over at Microsoft.
Yeah, I think he's probably best known. He was the guy that originally wrote Windows. He dreamed up Windows Task Manager. That was his real baby.
There you go. And that's
a pretty big deal.
Today. That code is still used today. You can still
to
manage tasks, and even though it's got
every day.
Yep. So
it's a good thing.
He's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of between where age-wise where you the two Chris's are. I think he's probably 57, 58, somewhere in there.
That's more around my age, I think, than you're a few years older than I am. Chris.
I am.
Yeah, but yeah.
Not much.
So, we are a bunch of cranky old guys. That's what we're here for.
That is true. That is true. So that's the Windows segment for this week. And I want to go ahead and move us to our tip of the week segment. But I want to remind everybody, hey, iTechGear, and Senator Warren, if you've made it this far, iTechGear was founded on the intent of making technology easy for everyone to use and understand. This is something that I have been passionate about since I actually started writing for Mr. Larry McJunkin over at WUGNET. And this
best we ever had,
including the good doctor. This team has been dedicated to providing intelligent content that is specifically directed to that purpose. Every week, we're going to be featuring a new computing tip authored by one of our experienced editors. You hear that, guys? You're experienced, and we're expecting you to come and jump in here. Questions about any of this tip, any of these wonderful tips and suggestions can be sent to tips@itechgear.org, or you can send them to me at chris@itechgear.org. But this week, Larry, you've got an interesting tip.
It is probably more so than you think. Progressive web apps have become a thing, whether you like them or not. And I use them a lot, but I thought maybe I was in a small minority. I'm not. Right now, as we speak, there are 6.3 billion pieces of hardware that have progressive apps on them right now, as we speak.
I've got
and there's a lot of reasons for that. PWAs are easier to develop. They're much less likely to carry malware. But oddly, with the 1.3 billion websites worldwide, only 54,000 websites have parallel web apps. And the reason the sites have them, like Travelocity and travel sites, Travigo uses them a lot. They convert more. They actually make them more money than the real website. So why not? And what's the biggest website in the world right now? It's Gmail. It's so far ahead of every other website out there. And with so many people using, gazillions of people use this product, Gmail. Up till now, the problem that most of us, I use it for 5 or 6 accounts, and I had to previously before web apps, I had to open up that many browser tabs. And the problem is then you open up another browser tab, and then your 4 account tabs get lost in this ribbon across the top of 20. And it's a mess. It's just a mess. So
it is.
Now everybody's been whining to Google to allow their progressive web apps to include a tabbed interface across the top.
Mhm.
Google has resisted that for a long time, but recently they added a couple of flags, and you can. I'll put this up, and when we put this up on the website at iTechGear.org, I'll have these two flags. You can put those in your URL window and enable these two flags, and you'll be off and running. So now I have 4 permanent tabs at the top of my Chrome web app for Gmail, and all of my 4 or 5 accounts are up there, and they stay there. They're there. They're wired there.
See, and that's
And
nice.
that's a big deal. It really
It
is.
is to have those tabs automatically come up when you start the browser is kind of cool. And they're always there.
Yeah,
for
and
you.
and I did a little research on this as well. I opened up Chrome, put the same web tabs in them, and it's almost twice as much resources are consumed as my web app with the same number of tabs. So
Oh,
it saves you money on resources.
there you
So
go.
we'll be adding this up to the iTechGear website this week. Check for it there. And by the way, don't limit yourself to just Gmail. You can use these multiple tabs for anything. I don't know,
For
your
any
banking.
website.
Yeah,
Any
any website, anything.
that you would be interested in.
30 seconds
what
is
it
all
is.
it takes to enable those tabs, and you're working.
And that is a huge deal because, like I said, every time you start that browser, you don't have to go and type in an address or even go to your bookmarks and hit on a bookmark.
No. And
Just comes up.
historically, Google takes about 4 to 6 months after releasing flags before they make the cut, if they do. And I'm sure these will. They'll
Yeah.
be incorporated at some point in a version of Chrome. So don't worry about
Sure.
it. It'll be here.
Sure.
That's it.
Well, that is a very helpful tip. So thank you very much, Larry. We'll be looking for that to hit the site this week, and we'll be very, very glad to see that happen. I'm going to go ahead now and move us to our pick of the week segment. And again, I just want to remind everybody and just take a moment to say, hey, our show picks are typically hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and actually use, and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These aren't paid advertisements. These aren't items that we have any kind of an affiliated marketing relationship with. If they were, the editorial policy over at iTechGear.org indicates that we have to disclose that information up front. These are really just things that we sincerely believe in, and we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we like
you.
There you go. And this week, I am all about, we talked a little earlier about, fine woven cases and whatnot from Apple and about how they are thankfully finally gone. I didn't have one, nor was I, but I'm always looking for a good way to carry my devices with me wherever I go. And I've got cases that are sitting all over the place. Some of these I thought were good at the time, some of them not so much. Quad lock. If you are a biker, or if you are a jogger, or if you are a four-wheeling kind of individual, and you want to be able to go ahead and take your phone with you, and you don't want it to fall off, because let's face it, you want to be able to have your phone available for some kind of navigation. If, say, you're on a motorcycle or a bicycle, even if you're biking across country or you're on a bicycle trip, you want to be able to have your phone attached to your bike or your mode of transportation without it falling off, hitting a bump or swerving or whatever, and having it fly out away from you and getting damaged. Quad Lock has developed a locking mechanism and system that will secure your device in your car, on your bike, on your arm, on your whatever it is, that will and it locks in place, and it ain't coming off. You've got to do some work, and you've got to purposely go and disengage this lock, or disengage your device from this locking mechanism in order to get it off. And if you're on a bike or a motorcycle or a four-wheeler, or if you're just jogging down the road or hiking, hint, hint, Joel,
Yep.
they've got a number of different systems available. They've got cases that are, and I had the thing up. Where is it? There it is. They've got systems available for iPhone, uh, Samsung Galaxy phones, Pixel phones, Joel. They've got even cases that are native cases for Huawei phones, as well as a universal adapter that can be attached to any case, any kind of existing case for any other device that's not natively supported, and it will fit on all of their um, uh, mounts, all of their mounts, whether it's a dash mount or a vent mount or some sort of an adhesive dash mount, or and they've also got a magnetized version for magnet head. They've also got a wireless MagSafe charging head, as well as a wireless charging head for something that may not necessarily be MagSafe compatible. And while the kits in and of themselves cost about $60, this gets you one case for whatever device that you've got, and then some sort of a mounting system, whether it's a vent mount, a adhesive dash mount, or a suction cup based mount. That's $60. If you want the MagSafe wireless charging head, which a lot of those phones that are out there right now that may support wireless charging of some kind, it may not necessarily be MagSafe compatible. Your phone, if has a the case will have a MagSafe or a magnetic based attachment to it on the case. Stick it to the MagSafe charging head. Bam, you're magnetically connected, and it ain't coming off unless you pull it off. It's on there it sticks very, very well. I've got some of these in the car. I really like these. I'm actually thinking about buying one or two for the office or for the desk here, to keep them, to allow them to attach and charge here at the house, or even at the office. Not bad. So for $60 for the kit, it's a decent buy. The MagSafe charging head for the car or desk, it's a little bit expensive, but works very, very well.
I was going to say it looks kind of beefy. It's not a piece of plastic junk. That's probably why it costs $60.
There is some rubberized plastic, but there's also some metal. All right.
It's hardened.
It's hardened. Right. All right. And it's rugged. It's meant to be, like I said, if you've got a motorcycle or a 4x4 or a four-wheeler or some kind of something or other, you'll attach to the handlebars or to some component near the middle of the handlebars, and it ain't coming off. It's not coming off. Not unless you take it off.
See, I looked at the Run one, which looks like it's designed to put further up the arm. The only problem with that is that it's going to run into my straps on my pack.
Sure.
For my hikes, I generally stick it in my pocket. Mm-hmm. Like today I had it in my hoodie. I do use it. I pull it out, but when I start a trail on all trails, if I stray off the trail, mm-hmm. It plays an audible sound in my ear. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I'll pull out the phone just to make sure to say, "Oh, did I go the wrong direction?" Because that can happen, But like, fortunately for me today, there was a couple opportunities where I could have done that, but I just took a second to look for the blue blazes, which this trail used. Found those, and I was able to continue on. So it would have to be more accessible than that and be able to go lower down on the arm, kind of like maybe on my right wrist, maybe. I don't know if that band would go tight enough for a wrist.
Don't know. I don't know. Yeah. The one thing that I have not tried or even looked at is the sports armband. So I don't know.
Right.
Nice thing about the sports armband though is it does come with the clutch that will allow you to go. It does tighten, so you can tighten it and Velcro it in place, and it's got that nice, wonderful little blue clutch that'll help you get that device off your arm quickly if you need to go ahead and do it. But you've got to purposely push.
Ironically, the thing I would like to have a mount like that for, I'm sure they don't have one for, and that would be one of my handheld radios. But
Sure. Sure.
in the car, of course, I do like to use them in the car. I have a mag mount on the car, so I just plug my
Yeah.
radio into that.
Right.
But then there's nowhere for that thing to go in the
Right.
car. I usually stick it in the cup holder. But
Right. See, I've got MagSafe
Yeah.
stuff in the car, or had MagSafe stuff in the car, but you hit a pothole, and God
Oh
knows
yeah,
in Michigan, in
he gonna
Chicago,
fly.
our potholes are nasty. All right.
Yeah.
Anywhere up north, really, the potholes are going to be nasty simply because of all the salt, and the corrosive power of salt during the wintertime, on the roads to melt the snow. Um, they get bad. So devices were flying off. You hit a pothole, the device goes flying, and that's not cool. So this is actually keeping everything in place, even in the car, and um, I'm really very very pleased with the performance of this particular thing. So I've had it for a couple of weeks, and it's really kind of nice. And the cases are rugged. These things are they're not real thick. They are no thicker than the device with the camera bump on an iPhone. So it's no thicker than that. And that magnet on the MagSafe case, and the MagSafe adapter there, it ain't, like I said, it's not coming off unless you purposefully pull it off. You have to exert a little bit of force in order to get it to move. So
Yep.
nice that it's there, and very pleased with it. So $60 for the car kit, $60 for the MagSafe charging head. And you can go and put your the running sports armband is $40. But it does come with that clutch, and it's really very nice and secure for your device, and you can have it anywhere you want, on your arm, on your wrist, whatever. So there you go. And that's the pick of the week. And that, kids, is also the show. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 86. Fine Woven is finally gone. Recorded live Sunday, April 21st, 2024, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, this is Christopher Spera, and for Mr. Larry McJunkin, welcome back, sir. Mr. Chris
Thank
Gavula,
you.
and Brother Joe McLaughlin, I want to say we will see you next time.